All right, this just in, score update. The Mets' projected payroll right now is $425 million. Las Vegas Raiders 3. Mets Weekly Podcast, Episode 2. Tons to discuss. Mets fans, welcome to 60 minutes of brutal honesty. Intro rolls. So I just want to remind everybody that are listening to us on the 8 available listening platforms and also watching us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We don't just do a podcast every Sunday. We also have multiple videos that go out during the week, including live streams, community posts, and shorts. Our goal is 1,000 subscribers by opening day, but at this rate we're going, we might hit it in about 2 weeks. So I want to thank you guys in advance for all the support over this past year. So like a 37-year-old early 2010s ball player, way past their prime, on to the Mets.
Yeah, another week, another big slate of Mets news being involved in every single thing and keeping us up at night. You know, thank God I'm a night owl. I know some people here have real jobs and hate the nighttime, but like me and Carson, we like being at night, so it's the perfect time for us. But some confusing moves, some very interesting rumors, and, you know, era of the all-star catcher might be over.
Yeah, as usual, the Mets, they don't like to, coincide with my sleep pattern. They're late night Billy. I mean, I miss the days when Sandy was just asleep at the nighttime like me. We had the same schedule, but F-Dog, he's up, he's working, and it's exciting as a Mets fan because we're seeing, like Andrew said, not we're seeing a lot of rumors, but we are seeing signings. Carson mentioned that huge payroll, so the Mets have been very active. It looks like they're still doing some more things, and there are more things that need to be done. So it's just a good time right now. Try to get those last little pieces to finish out the roster. Now the starting rotation looks like it's pretty much set. Now they kind of just fill out the rest of those pieces of the team.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. And we're going to pick up where we left off. And I mean literally. I was in the middle of editing episode 1 when this news broke. The Mets have signed Japanese phenom pitcher Kodai Senga to a 5-year, $75 million contract with 4th and 5th year player options. Senga is 29 years old and has spent 11 years in Japan pitching for the SoftBank Hawks. He has quite the scouted arsenal, including a high 90s fastball that can reach 100 to 102, along with his signature forkball splitter combo pitch, also known as the Ghost Fork. It's known for that because it disappears across the plate. Spooky. He also has a curveball and a slider that reportedly needs some work to adjust to major league hitters. Senga now joins the Mets rotation as the slotted number 3 behind future first ballot Hall of Famers Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer.
Talking about like if they were going to get him, then of course, like you said, they did right away. So again, the Mets just not really lining up with the way our recording schedule works, but it's good that they got him. We knew that they needed a number 3 pitcher. I mean, that was a really big topic in our last podcast. We were just saying that, okay, you got Verlander, that kind of fills in for DeGrom, but Bassitt was important for the team. You need somebody to take that spot. And Senga is that guy. I think what's interesting, I know we'll get to Bassitt later, but when the Mets signed Senga, I figured it's because they kind of got priced out on the Bassitt market. I thought he was going to get something pretty crazy. He didn't get anything too crazy. I mean, 3 years, I thought he was going to get more in the 5 range because the Mets gave Senga 5. I know Senga's younger, but we'll see what happens because I just want to believe it when I see it. Like, it's exciting that they got it, based on the Twitter highlights. Like, that's great and all, but we always talk about the transition of being overseas coming to Major League Baseball. For a pitcher, it might work a little better because the hitters have never seen this guy before. He has this scary ghost forkball, so maybe the ghost will kind of just scare the rest of the NL East away. I hope so. You know what I mean? Like, I hope Austin Riley's afraid of it, and all these other hitters are just afraid. Bryce Harper, he can't see the ghost forkball. I hope so. But again, we'll see when it happens. But I am glad they got an acquisition for the rotation, and we'll see what they do from there. If they are going to move some other guys, are they going to add more starting pitchers? They're just in a better state right now. Just having another certified pitcher in there.
Yeah, again, and you think about what Bassitt got at 3 years and 60, how I'm looking at it, hopefully how Mets fans should want to look at this Senga deal. Is it a 3-year, $45 million deal? Because of that 3rd-year opt-out, and he goes out and pitches the way we hope, and he does, it has that, I'm not expecting a Cy Young caliber Rookie of the Year type guy. All I wanted to be, sub 4 ERA, give me some solid innings, whatever. But a lot of the things that people were like, oh, we should just sign Bassitt. Why are we signing Senga? And when you have Bassitt, which you can pitch in New York and all that, the biggest thing is, we've said it, we know what Chris Bassitt is in New York. He's going to be the innings eater. He's going to have a sub-4 ERA. That's what he is. You don't know what Kodai Senga can be. He could be Yu Darvish. He could be complete dog shit. We never know. There's a good balance of, hey, he has the ace potential, and he's coming kind of to the perfect spot where he doesn't have to be, like when you say Kikuchi came over, there was nobody else in the Mariners rotation. So he was like, ooh, that's our new big, top flight rotation guy, and he didn't pitch well. With Senga's case, he's coming over with two legit aces in front of him, and all we need him to be is a comparable, capable number 3 starter. And his upside, he could be in a few years when the Scherzers and the Verlander deals, he still has a year left. Maybe he moves into that number 2 spot. Maybe, hell, if he comes out and dominates, maybe he's the ace in 2 years. Who knows? Because we don't know what this guy's going to do in the big leagues. And we're not little YouTube insiders that watch a YouTube video and thinks, man, I know everything about this guy. He's a 4-pitch mix, even though he really only has 2 good pitches. Like, no, nobody knows what this guy is going to be. But again, it's the highest upside available. We know what Taijuan Walker is. We know what Chris Bassitt was, that the Mets needed. You know what? Let's not be safe. Let's not be conservative. We already have 2 question marks in the rotation. Hell, why not 3 and add Senga, who could potentially be a top flight guy, or it could be a top flight reliever, which is something there is some thought that he maybe is a reliever. He did kind of get a comparable deal to Robert Suarez. So even if he's not a legit starter, if he becomes an elite pen mate, like, the contracts are capable. I'm hoping he's a top flight guy, but he's a 2-pitch pitcher. And even if he doesn't translate as a starter, he still has the great ability to transfer over to a reliever and maybe be a great reliever. And on that contract, it is comparable what relievers are getting these days. So the floor is, we don't know what the floor is, but the ceiling is unmatched.
No, I was just going to add that the Padres are absolute idiots for signing that contract because, the fact that – and actually, the Padres look bad, but also makes the Mets look good that they got him for that cheap of AAV that I know we talked about. I don't know if it was when we did the Senga live stream or in the podcast, but we talked about, like, well, if he stinks, if he is more reliever, like, it's not too far for what some relievers get paid anyway. So, no matter what, the Mets are kind of covered either way, whether he's really good or he's just kind of good. But I like what Andrew said that, maybe because the expectations aren't too high, it'll allow him to kind of settle in. And also the fact that he is a little younger and that he hopefully doesn't have as much mileage on his arm. I think that's really important because we know how old Verlander is, how old Scherzer is. If Carrasco is going to be in this rotation, how old he is. Like, you need to have somebody who's kind of young. Even Quintana's a veteran too. So you need somebody that's kind of young that you hope their arm could hold up for the entirety of the season. That's what I just hope for. I just hope that he makes it through the year healthy because everybody else, I feel like they're going to have at least one or multiple IL stints. So that's the just the end. They need to be the durable guy and, like Andrew said, just give us solid starts. We're not asking for too much. The one thing you hope is that if you are in a short playoff series in Game 3, he doesn't put up a stinker. That would help. If you could pitch well in the postseason, that would be really ideal. So this way, the Mets, if they don't make any more offensive moves, and they're going to need to be a team that relies heavily on their starting pitching to win series, they're going to need all 3 guys firing on all cylinders to pull it off.
I personally wouldn't blame the Padres for giving what they gave to Robert Suarez because I think it's more of the problem that the Mets created, giving what they gave to Edwin Diaz, and that's kind of just broke the entire reliever market. It's kind of a new era. You have a lot of these pitchers just coming out. We know of the Big Five that was brought up through the minor league system. They're all gone now, so now you have yet another. And if you do look up Kodai Senga on Google, it says that he's going to be wearing number 48 currently on Wikipedia. And I don't know how to feel about that.
A part of me hopes they do it. That would just be some real petty stuff, just cause chaos. Why not? It's like, oh, you want to talk about Texas blueprint for winning? Watch this. Your number is gone. I don't totally hate it.
Again, I don't think Jake disrespected the Mets as much as people think he did. But you know what? I would not do that. But that's just it. What do you have to say? Say what you have to say on your damn mic then.
When we talk about Jake, now that he's gone, Brody years ago was like, if you don't want to pay me, trade me. Maybe they should have took Brody up on his offer, before Brody became GM and all that stuff.
Well, no, Brody paid him. Oh, Brody paid him when he
Well, yeah, Brody paid him.
when
But
he
I'm
got in
saying
control. Was the first thing
before
he
Brody
did.
was GM and he was just DeGrom's agent, they had that whole press conference. If you're not going to pay me, trade me. Maybe he was onto something.
Thanks to David Wright. That was why that they got Jacob deGrom on such a good deal. As for Senga, off the top of my head, again, I'm going to give like my full-on judgment of it. From what I'm hearing with the occasional and to frequent command issues that he has with his fastball, lack of depth that he has in his entire arsenal, where he has this fastball and this ghost fork thing, and then the rest of the breaking stuff needs a little bit of work, he looks like a reliever to me. And I could be wrong, but, he has the explosiveness where he can be one of these hard-throwing starters. But again, we saw a lot of these situations with Jacob deGrom, and I'm not saying he is Jacob deGrom, but those guys who throw very hard and they're starters, it's hard to keep them healthy. So a lot of these signs that I'm seeing with Kodai Senga, and we don't know what this guy is going to be, but off the top of my head, he looks like a reliever to me.
DeGrom got away with throwing mostly 2 pitches when he was at his best these past few years. He mostly was the fastball and the slider. I don't know if Senga's both those pitches are elite enough to just get away with those two.
That's the thing. Like,
So
not
that's
everybody
the only
has
hope.
Jacob deGrom stuff. Like,
But
that's
if
the
they're
thing.
saying he could touch 102, it's like, well, wait a second here. I mean, who knows? Not every starter could touch 102.
I'm not just going to say that the velocity is the only thing that keeps deGrom as a dominant pitcher. So I'm just assuming this, and maybe I'm being an awful person for saying this. Just like I said, David Peterson is a reliever, and I was completely characterized as a member of ISIS for that. It's a risk. We know it's a risk. These guys coming from Japan, we know that the ceiling is extremely high and the floor is extremely low. We just don't know where these guys land in between. But I am excited to see what this kid can do in New York.
How come on Mets.com, Senga ain't even on here and Yohan Lopez still is?
Because they haven't officially announced the deal yet. Same thing with Verlander was officially announced. They haven't officially announced Senga yet.
Why? What are they waiting for? David Robertson's on here.
They're waiting for Brooks Raley to approve of it because, he has a history of... So as the Mets get their new number 3 starter, their old number 3 starter is leaving. Another Mets free agent is now off the table. Chris Bassitt has signed a 3-year, $63 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. The Mets acquired Bassitt last offseason from Oakland in exchange for prospect JT Ginn and minor league pitcher Adam Oller. Bassitt was his workhorse self for the Mets in 2022, posting a 3.42 earned run average and a 3.66 fielding independent pitching in 181.2 innings pitched.
Yeah, the fact that Bassett's gone now is in the American League East. We'll see how that goes. Again, it didn't really end well for Bassitt. He had, a couple of stinkers in September, and then the last time we saw him was in the postseason walking batters. Not really something that Chris was doing during the majority of the season, but now that he's gone, it's still crazy to me that it looks like Taijuan Walker got a better deal than him. I don't know what Philly was thinking, but it happens. I still thought he would get a little more as well. I just think I've been kind of surprised with this free agent market in general. There's been guys like David Robinson where I thought the Mets got a really good deal on him, but then there's some other deals like, wow, that was kind of an overpay. So I think we haven't necessarily seen a steady market of like, okay, this is like correct. If this guy got this guy should get down here. It feels like it's just been all over the place. Like some teams are overpaying, some teams are just getting good deals. So it's like hard to really make of what you're seeing because you just don't know anymore, like what team is thinking compared to the other. So again, the only thing that we hope that Senga could replace is just that innings production. Whether Bassitt, he had his bad starts to the West Coast, everyone likes to mention, okay, sure. But just the fact that there were so many times where he did go 7, he did go 8, he did go 6, he threw 112 pitches. And it wasn't like the Mets needed him to throw 112 pitches, but he did anyway just so they could preserve that bullpen just a little more, just to have everybody just a tad more rested. This way, those times where Diaz needs to go 6 outs, Ottavino needs to go 5 outs, you had the flexibility to do that because Chris Bassitt had given you all those innings. And you just had extra relievers at your disposal for the Carlos Carrasco starts, for the Taijuan Walker starts, for the Trevor Williams starts. You just had that flexibility. So is Senga going to be a guy that, like, we could talk about ERA and all those things. Is he going to be a guy that consistently gives you 6 to 8 innings? We'll see. I hope so, because I don't think Verlander and Scherzer, I don't think I would make them do that. I think at their advanced age, with their injury histories, I would try not to over push Verlander and Scherzer in the regular season. So I really hope that Senga is able to kind of match what Bassitt was doing, because Carrasco ain't going to do it. And I don't really think Quintana, I don't think he's going to do that either. So, I mean, that's the thing that I'm curious about. That's just the one thing you lose with Chris Bassitt, because not everybody could do it. I mean, especially nowadays, we see so much with, a pitcher can't really throw more than 100 pitches, and it just seems that starters are just limited so much in the modern day baseball. So Chris Bassitt, he was a bit of an old school guy the way he was able to do that. So I wouldn't necessarily always take that for granted, but we'll see how it ends up working out, because he's gone, Senga's here, so they're just going to have to live with that decision they made.
Again, would it have been nice to for the Mets to bring Bassitt back, to have that guy that you can trust 170 innings? There you go. You can pencil that in pretty confidently in this rotation, especially with, like we said, the old guys of Verlander and Max. Old people are very brittle and very, they don't last. They're just, we prove, even if you get the grunt, once you hit like 35, you become glass. So, you got to be careful with the older guys. You're banking on Senga, who's never pitched in the big league, to replace 170 quality innings from Bassitt. Wouldn't it have been nice to say, hey, maybe instead of giving $13 million to Quintana, and then maybe instead of Quintana bring Bassitt back? I would have maybe preferred that. It would have been nice. I would have picked him over Quintana, but decent money. Again, less than Taijuan Walker. Again, Philadelphia just is like, let's just give a shit ton of money to Taijuan Walker. Just got to screw up the market. Less than Jameson Taillon. So, I mean, it was good value for the Blue Jays. He's going to a good spot. Do I wish him the best? Yeah, sure. Why not? We'll get to his Twitter antics of pissing off Mets fans, because Twitter and Mets fans just love just simple goodbyes. But you know what, Chris, you're a cool dude. I don't really got a problem with you, but you gave up a 2-run single to Austin Nola in the wild card to piss off.
I do want to get into that social media drama, and kind of want to just put out like a PSA at this point. When a free agent leaves the Mets fans, especially on social media, are always looking for a reason to hate the person for leaving. But some people really need to realize that baseball's a business at the end of the day. They take what they think is the best offer for them. There's no hard feelings, unless they go on Twitter and talk shit and just say a bunch of nonsense. On Instagram, I don't even know where it was, but Chris Bassitt comments on Taijuan Walker that he looks better in red. So everybody, have to make their assumptions and go after Chris Bassitt. Fuck this guy. He's a traitor. He's an awful person. First of all, Bassitt didn't choose to be in New York. He was traded here. Second, Taijuan Walker does look better in red. I'm glad he's gone. So fuck off. Anyways.
It's interesting that you said that, because it reminds me of what Bassitt said around the end of the season when he was saying, like, New York's not for everybody and things of that. Like, was that a foreshadowing that maybe he doesn't love New York? And maybe that's why, like we said, the contract wasn't crazy. So maybe that's why the Mets were just like, let's pivot to Senga, because we know Chris Bassitt doesn't love New York anyway. You never know. I mean, because that's the stuff that we don't know for sure. Like with DeGrom, who actually likes New York? Who actually doesn't like New York? Those are the kind of things that we can only speculate about.
There was rumors about the Mets being in his market, but there may have just been like some kind of a limit price, especially when they knew that they're like, okay, maybe we're the front runners for Senga, and this is the guy that we're going to go after. But, they probably could have offered this to him if they didn't get Senga. That was probably where they probably were going to pivot to if they didn't get him, but they did. I guess we'll never know unless he actually comes out and saying that he actually hates New York and he's grateful to be gone from the organization and God got him.
We'll hear something from him because he's a big guy, pitching ninja guy, and he goes on his podcast pretty much. So he'll say something stupid like in about a year and a half maybe, being like, New York's, they're a bunch of angry people, and if you don't throw a no-hitter, and I want it out of here. I'm used to pitching in Oakland where there's like 12 people at the games. I was surprised at the size of the people that showed up, and they booed me, yada, yada.
I would be mad about his comments about New York if he wasn't so spot on with it. I'd be more mad of it because, the earth is falling, through a black hole if we lose 2 games in a row. That's how New York sports fans are. I don't know if that's just him being just completely surprised with how aggressive New York fans can be, or he's just taking an observation and he just knows how the situation is. But I don't know. I wish him the best. He was one of my favorite pitchers in Oakland. I'm glad that the Mets got him. It sucks of how it ended with him because you don't see that from Chris Bassitt. I've never really seen that from Chris Bassitt. When you need him to win a game, he usually does. And when you need him to pitch well, he usually does. but it just didn't happen in those last 2 games against Atlanta and then San Diego in the playoff. Now, for those of you who did not see Friday's video, the Mets are listening to trade offers for Carlos Carrasco. The Mets front office believes that Tyler McGill or David Peterson have a good chance of outperforming Carrasco in 2023. Their preferred ideal return would be a controllable young starter who can contribute this season. The Mets are reportedly worried about a 36-year-old Carrasco of what he can actually bring in 2023 due to his major injury history in the past few years.
It's a move. Again, I get what Steve Cohen has bajillions of dollars, and we think, oh, we could pay anything. And the comments of that section of that video, you can have is throwing our saying back at our faces. You can't have enough pitching. Mets fan, what do the Mets want back for Carlos Carrasco? Pitching.
That was not my answer. I was just literally just gonna say like a half-eaten grilled cheese sandwich, to be honest.
I mean, if it's from Panera, maybe.
Panera slaps.
Panera does slap. It's kind of overrated, but if I gotta eat it, I'll eat it. Besides the point. Carlos Carrasco, who's one starting pitcher, potentially who's making $13 million, into 2. We said they want 1, but maybe you take multiple pitchers who are maybe, like we said in our video, failed top prospects. Guys who have not hit their ceiling. The Mets obviously they're going to spend a ton of money. And everybody's like, well, why would you just spend $13 million? That's $13 million off the tax bill. If you're Steve Cohen, yeah, you're going to spend a lot of money. Would you rather let's say you're still going to use that $13 million. You trade Carrasco for one of the guys on our video, Ryan Weathers, Miguel Baez, Asa Lacy, pick whatever.
Spoiler alert. Hello.
Spoiler alert. And let's say you turn it into a couple of low young arms, and you take that $13 million. Maybe you sign Adam Ottavino. That's what the Mets are trying to do here. You would get some extra pitching depth, which you can never have enough pitching. Yeah, the Mets are still trying to trade him for extra pitching. And then you have $13 million. You can use other ways. Another reliever, maybe a Brandon Drury, maybe a Jurickson Profar, maybe Adam Duvall. Do not do Adam Duvall. That sucks. But you can use the $13 million in a better way, and the Mets still want to get a pitcher back. Maybe just Cohen wants it off the books, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't just take that $13 million, pivot it to Adam Ottavino, pivot it to Corey Knebel, pivot it to any other free agent, because Carlos Carrasco is a 36-year-old starter. I'm fine just trading him for a couple of prospects. You have an extra couple trade chips at the trade deadline. Hey, you want to go out and trade for Shohei Ohtani? Oh, here's an extra Austin Martin, or here's an extra Asa Lacy to actually throw extra trade chip. But I understand they want to get a guy to win now, so they're going to move him for a pitcher like a Michael Baez, like a Ryan Weathers, like those kind of guys who have big league experience and are cheap to use that money elsewhere.
This is great asset management. That's what they're thinking of right now. And they never do. They never do this correctly.
Yeah, so if people are wondering why would the Mets do this trade, it's because they've done something similar already in the Steve Cohen era, and that was the Steven Matz trade, where they traded Steven Matz for 3 young pitchers. So you're trading pitching to get pitching. Sean Reed Foley, who the Mets just re-signed on a minor league deal, so he's still a part of this team. Yennsy Diaz, it didn't work out. He had some okay moments, but then the other guy, John Wynn, still can't say his name even these years later. He was part of the Khalil Lee trade, who became a top 10 prospect in the Mets system. So the Mets were able to improve their farm system, get some outfield prospects, which they desperately needed, and still get some young, controllable pitching, which they needed. And that was Steven Matz coming off of a bad year. And if Carlos Carrasco is a pretty good pitcher who's making $14 million, just think of what they could get. They could get some other young swingman arms to fill in either for that Trevor Williams role, or just like Andrew said, guys that they have something good about them, even though they haven't lived up to it yet. If it's something they feel like Jeremy Hefner and the rest of the coaching staff could work with and just get the most out of these young arms, they could do something like that. Or, like Andrew said, you're just freeing up that money to get Jurickson Profar, who fits really well in this team, and just other guys like that. So there is value to it. I think it's a little – I still think it's a little strange because it was a team option that was picked up. Because if the sole purpose is to get rid of the money, you had the choice to either pick them up or not pick them up. You could have just declined it, had that $14 million free. So that's just where I'm getting at. I feel like Carrasco is one of those guys where it's like, if they really wanted to trade him when they had all these pitchers, you probably could have, because I would have liked to maybe gotten an idea of what the trade market was like for him, even if I didn't do the trade. at least get a feel for what other organizations, how they valued him, what they'd want from him, so that if I was going to trade him in the offseason, I pick up that option, how hard will it be? Will I need to eat some of the salary? Will I need to attach something to it to make the deal a little more enticable? That's just something that I'm hoping that the Mets kind of pondered, because it's not something where all of a sudden at the end of the year, they're like, oh, you know what? We want to pick up Carrasco's option just to trade him. Like, I hope that this was a thought that they had before the offseason, so they already know what the trade market is like for somebody like Carrasco.
I think it was a little bit of the unpredictableness of where they're like, we don't know what's going to happen with Jacob deGrom at the moment. We don't know if we're bringing him back.
Which, again, I don't believe, because they had to know that Jake wanted 5 and they weren't going to go 5. They can't be that dumb.
Like I said last episode, he said that he wanted 5 years in 2021 spring training, and they didn't know. They were surprised. He just up and left to Texas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they should have known that before picking up the Carrasco option, that Jake was going to be gone. If they knew that Verlander was going to be the top priority and that they were going to get at least one of Senga, Bassitt, or Quintana, like, there was going to be plenty of other starting pitchers out there available who are better than Carrasco. So I don't know. I think there was a little bit like it was safe, as in they'll have a pitcher, but it's also a little risky. Whereas, like, if we get a pitcher, we're gonna have to try to get rid of. We hope that we could get either equal value or some kind of value back for him if we trade him. Because they're also relying on McGill to bounce back. Because I know, like, he's not really a reliever. It didn't end well. But they are, if they do this trade, they are counting on McGill to bounce back. He pitched well. He got hurt. He came back, got hurt. So, like, you know, Carrasco has injuries too. So they're really relying on him or Peterson, who, we know, the strike zone. We don't need to hear the rant again.
I think they do need to hear the rant again, because apparently they're putting way too much fucking trust into him. Listen, it's not my money. What am I going to do? I'm just going to sit here and scream at them. Now, a few days ago, the Mets signed catcher Omar Naravez to a 2-year, $15 million contract with a player option in 2024. Narvaez is one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, who has 10 to 15 home run power, but hasn't hit fairly well recently. Since his breakout year in 2019, he has slashed .233, .318, .350 with an 85 WRC+. So this opens up, I'd say, 2 questions. What's the future for James McCann? Which I hope it's what I'm hoping. And then there's also, what is going to be the role for Francisco Alvarez next season?
Yeah, it's an intriguing move, and I love how all of Mets Twitter was like, why the hell are we bringing in another catcher and paying another catcher when we have Nito, we have Alvarez, we have McChicken? And I get he's better than McChicken, he's better than Nito, but I still don't like why. Like, you could have, and I get why they're going to make Alvarez the DH. And I've made a rant, I forgot what video it was in. I don't want to see Francisco Alvarez as this DH, because his value is diminished. He doesn't have any value if he's just going to be a bat. Oh, he's the third catcher. So what? He's going to catch every freaking once a month, maybe? Maybe once every 2 months if, Tomas Nito has a stubby toe. And, then finally. As soon as he's on this big league roster, he needs to be behind the plate, because that's where his value is the highest it's going to be. If he's just another bat off the bench, a guy who only plays one position, so you're putting another guy on the bench who only plays one position, and his best position is in the batter's box, and now you're carrying Omar Narvaez and Tomas. If Alvarez was in AAA, unless he didn't get the call to the big leagues yet, and he could spend the whole year in Syracuse, I like that a little bit more. You have a platoon between lefty, righty. You've got, a solid platoon behind the plate. But the fact that they're kind of like not putting faith in Alvarez and being like, oh, his defense improved, which it did in AA, and saying, oh, kid, you're not catching anymore. You're just going to be a bat. So the progression he made defensively last year goes up in smoke, because he's not going to be behind the plate this year. They're going to say, hey, you're going to be a bat. Do what you do best. We don't care about you to improve defensively. You're just going to hit. I hate it. The fact that it just didn't put faith in the kid to say, you know what? Take a risk. The Dodgers, when Will Smith was a prospect, Will Smith sucked defensively. Now he's one of the better defenders. He's not the best, but he's improved mightily because he's playing every day behind the plate. His bat was first. The defense came later. The fact that the Mets are like, nope, we're going to coddle this kid. Let the kid grow. Yes. And even if his defense still sucks, he's still going to give you the offense. at catcher, which is at a way more of a premium than if it is at if it's at DH. And the fact that they're like, you know what, no, let's push it back 2 years. Because now he's going to pick up his second year. There's no way, unless he comes out and hits 30 homers. Novarez is going to pick in that second year, $7 million player option. He's a good player. I mean, he's flawed like every other catcher. He had a good year in 2021, but he improved defensively, but the bat hasn't been the same. I guess, but for me, if it was up to me, I'm putting the kid in the fire and letting him either turn into who we think he is or get us to know at the trade deadline. If he can't be, then if Ohtani were to become available, maybe move him. Because if he's just a DH, and if this is now holding the Mets back to adding a lefty-killing DH, then this is even more of why. Why sign this guy? So, am I mad? It's just kind of mid to me. It's like, whatever. Could he bounce back? Is he better than James McCann? Yeah, I'm better. My Chungus ass can be a better catcher than James McCann. Doesn't say much. And the fact that he's getting paid, almost the same, so there's more money to throw into a catching position into this black hole when you have the answer already on the roster.
I will also raise you another point. There was a catcher that got traded to Milwaukee and got to play every day finally, and his defense got better, and now he's one of the best defensive catchers in the league. That guy's name is Omar Narvaez. I will say right now, Omar Narvaez was one of my favorite catchers going into last season. I really like him as a player, but it definitely opens up the two possibilities of what you do with McCann and Nido. Now, as for the McCann part of it, he's getting paid a major league contract. He's getting paid similar. Actually, no, he's getting paid the exact same value that McCann was getting paid the first 2 years in $8 million, correct? Correct.
Pretty much, yeah.
So that possibly means that they have more money there and they're trying to move the McCann money. You also have the point of Tomas Nido could possibly get traded. He does have more value. You also have this entire field of pitchers that preferred Nido that are gone. DeGrom's gone. Bassitt's gone. Scherzer's still here, but he's only been here for 1 year. Syndergaard's gone. He preferred Nido. He made this whole stink about that. What's the move here? Do they move Tomas Nido, who has more value? Do they move James McCann? Do they move both of them? I don't even know what they do at this point. I like the addition of Omar Narvaez. I like him as a possible mentor for Francisco Alvarez defensively. The fact that they signed him before they traded McCann or before they traded Tomas Nido, it's weird. And knowing our luck, maybe they do trade him before this podcast gets out. I like Omar Narvaez. I think he's a plus guy to put on your roster because the Mets can be very unpredictable sometimes, especially with managing assets, like I've said.
I wasn't on the stream about Omar Narvaez. I'm personally not a big fan of this move. I think that Narvaez, well, Carson said, all true. Good defender, good player. Great. He's too similar to Tomas Nido. I just don't understand why we would have to pay $7.5 million, maybe even more, if he picks up that player option.
And there's another point as to why they trade Nido. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what they're going to do.
But again, when we talk about asset management and things like that, why are you paying more for the same player and then trade your player?
There's such a confusion. Exactly.
And if you do trade Nido, you still have McCann's contract. So you have two catchers who are getting paid major league salaries, and your number one prospect is just doing God knows what, maybe DHing. And if it's up to me, if I'm going to give $10 million to another catcher this year, it wasn't Omar Narvaez. It was what the St. Louis Cardinals gave Wilson Contreras, because this year his AAV is $10 million. Because the problem the Mets had at catcher last year was from offense. It was not because of defense, because Nido ended up getting the majority of the catching down the stretch. So the problem the Mets had was on offense. So you get another guy who he had his year in Seattle where he hit 22 home runs. He had his all-star year in 2021 where he hit pretty well. But last year he didn't hit very good. So I just don't understand why we would pay $7.5 million to a guy who we have somebody very similar who's already a very good defensive catcher. We're already paying another catcher too much. Alvarez's growth, who knows how that affects that, and counting on Alvarez for power, some at DH. So if Alvarez isn't quite ready, or if the ankle issue lingers, Narvaez could fill that role. So if Alvarez is ready, Mets could trade a catcher. So it's just like, well, what is going on here? And it's like Andrew said with Alvarez, it's like the kid has got to catch. And it isn't so much he has to improve defensively. That's part of it. But he also needs to get those reps in of working with these pitchers. If Kodai Senga is going to be here for 5 years, if Max Scherzer is going to be here for 2 more years, if Verlander is going to be here for 2 years, Alvarez should get those reps with them. This way for next season, for the season after that, Alvarez already has a good rapport with these guys. He already works well with them because when it comes do or die time, if Alvarez has to catch come postseason time, you'd want to have those reps and you want to have that major league experience in. So again, it just makes the whole thing with why they called him up, it just makes everything so weird. So my thing is that, like, if you wanted to sign Narvaez to make Alvarez the DH, you should have just signed a DH and just let Alvarez catch or let Nito catch. Like, I just don't get it. I just think that you already have – it just doesn't make sense because somebody has to move. And no matter what, you're going to have too many catchers with Alvarez here. So whether you trade Nito, you still have 3 catchers. If you trade McCann, you still have 3 catchers. And if you don't trade either, you got 4 catchers. And it's like Andrew was talking about and we've all talked about, the bench, the depth. Why do you have like 3 or 4 guys who hold DH? You can't have like 4. What are you doing with Vientos? Like, you can't have 4 DHs on your roster. That can't be your bench. Trade somebody. Trade anybody. Because, again, it's similar to like we talked about Carrasco. You signed Narvaez with maybe the assumption that you trade McCann. You signed Carrasco with maybe the assumption that you could trade him. So it's just like, why are we assuming here that listen, the McCann contract is not very appealing. Like, I don't know what teams are like, oh my God, we'll take it. 2 years, he's getting like $12 million each. Let's grab him. Whatever you want, I'll take it. Like, who's saying that? So it's very confusing to me. I just think that we were at the part of the off season where we should have been looking more at pitching. We should have been looking more at hitting, not getting another defensive first catcher, because you can show me the baseball savant page. You can show me the rankings with Narvaez. Guess who's right next to him? Tomas Nido. So it's like, why do I need him? I already have you, kind of the right-handed version of you. So, and a guy who already has the experience with these pitchers in Nido. So I just don't think it's a perfect fit. Like, again, I understand Narvaez is a good player, but I think on this particular team, it's not a great fit.
I will say one thing about the entire McCann market that he has. Apparently he does have some interest. I don't know why, but I don't know how you can look at him and say, I want this guy on my team and he is great and I'm willing to give him $24 million in the next 2 years. My priority here at catcher, as much as I like Omar Naravez as a player, I'm not going to be full on tooting the horn of this guy is better than James McCann, he's better than Tomas Nido. Most of these guys are better than James McCann and Tomas Nido. My main priority at catcher is Francisco Alvarez. And I think that they're really stunting the development, especially even if you have 3 catchers after you trade 1. I don't know. What do they have in the works here? Is it possible that, you get your old pitcher and 2 catchers like the R.A. Dickey trade, bringing in Carrasco and Nido and McCann, sending them off to a team for a prospect? Could this mean that maybe Omar Naravez, who liked catching Corbin Burns, they're going to trade for Corbin Burns? I don't know what direction they're going in. And I especially don't trust them at the catcher position because they have created such a graveyard since Piazza left. So I am just really confused. I don't understand what's going to happen. Maybe it'll make sense in the long run. I like Omar Naravez, but it's like, finish the job here. That's definitely been one of those situations with the Mets. You make a move to benefit your team, finish the job. So hopefully they do. They said that McCann is expected to be traded before camp.
Yeah, I think we can't fully grade the move until we see the final roster. I mean, if they move both catchers, I don't know. Again, if they move Vientos to make more space for Alvarez, like, let's not forget, Darren Ruff is still employed. Like, it's still a thing. Like, what is his role now on the bench if Alvarez is your DH? It's
about having DH depth. Okay, you want 9 DHs on your bench and a few in AAA.
What was starting to bug me now is that, like, we're gonna trade Ruff, we're gonna trade Carrasco, we're gonna trade McCann. You haven't done any of them yet. So stop telling me about who you're going to trade and, like, actually start making the move.
And tell me who's going to want him, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we're going to trade Darren Ruff for what? For who? Like Terry Collins was saying, like, nobody wants him. He stinks.
The boss man, Steve Cohen, reportedly believes that this team needs more offense. And, yeah, you know what? I agree. The Mets reportedly have interest in possible reunion with our old pal, Michael Conforto. As for Michael Conforto, he went unsigned all of last year due to shoulder surgery. His 2021 with the Mets was not great, slashing .332, .344, .384 with a 106 WRC plus in 479 plate appearances. Conforto would be coming into a 30-year-old season with his reported current market at 4 teams: the Mets, the Marlins, the Astros, and the Rangers. It looks like the Mets are considering a reunion with him. I don't even know what to say at this point. I think it's just a broken record. Let's just get it out of the way. And Frank, I'm going to interrupt you and go after you if you say something that's not true.
Okay, well, then you can tell me where I'm wrong. He missed all of last season hurt. That's true. Okay. So you don't know where he's at right now. I mean, he could say he's healthy, but we don't fully know how recovered he is and how well he is. The last time we did see him play, which was 2 years ago, he did not have a good season, or he had a disappointing. He was supposed to be better than the performance we got. So I think with both of those two things, they're both a risk. And I think that we kind of know what he is on this team, in this lineup. And we've talked so much about, like, do something a little different, shake it up a little bit, change up the core to try to get some different results. So I don't know if bringing back a former Met necessarily does that. I still would probably just try something different. I want somebody that's a little more, they're looking to swing the bat first. I know Conforto has a good eye. He draws a lot of walks, but I still think that you're going to have guys in front of him that are getting on base. Nimmo's going to get on. Marte gets on. Lindor gets on. If Canna's banging out, he gets on. So it's like, okay, now you need someone to drive those guys in. If you're drawing a walk and you're just passing the baton to Omar Naravez and Darren Ruff, they're going to leave him there. I just need somebody who is more aggressive at the plate, that's looking to hit the ball over the fence, if that's going to be our DH. So I just don't think, with the other guys are around him, with so many other guys are looking to draw walks before swing the bat, first pitch take instead of first pitch swing, I just don't think he's a perfect fit for this team. And again, we don't even know where he's at, if he's anything close to the guy he was. So I just don't, he's just not my number one option on the market.
All right, time to throw a nice little curveball in, just like how Michael Conforto leaned in on a curveball. I am actually turning on the thought of bringing back Michael Conforto, because I am scared of Mark Canha. You started to see it last year, where Canha in left field, we've made it clear, he catches a fly ball like he's trying to talk to women, the nerd trying to talk to women. He is not a comfortable, he makes the plays, he doesn't drop them like Dom Smith does, but he doesn't look comfortable out in the outfield. And you started to see the offense was still good at times, teeter off, and he's becoming 35 years old. He's getting up there in age. I would be fine if he were to be brought in a la the Tyler Naquin role, meaning potentially platooning the 2 in left field. The Mets need to get a fourth outfielder. We've made it clear, punch the wall. The Mets need to replace Tyler Naquin. I mean, yes, Tyler Naquin sucked, whatever. Mets don't have a backup fourth outfielder. Jeff McNeil should not be your backup fourth outfielder. And Conforto can give you the ability to move Mark Canha to potentially be the platoon with Vogelbach. If they're not going in Alvarez, whatever, it could make Mark Canha the fourth outfielder, and Conforto can go back to left, where he played at the beginning. Yes, he became a right fielder. During his best years weren't right, but when he was coming up as a prospect, he could play left. And I'm just not, and maybe this is me being anti-Mark Canha, and I'm just expecting a bit of regression from Canha, being an everyday starting left fielder. That the fact that if Conforto can come in, not say supplant Mark Canha in left field, but let's say it's a 60-40 split in left field, I'm growing on that idea because I want the Mets to add I want our fourth outfielder not to be Tyler Naquin, levels of a guy just going to strike out a ton, not make a ton of contact. If Mark Canha became that fourth outfielder, I would feel a lot more confident, and it's a flexible ability. Move Canha to DH if you want to have him against the lefty, even though last year he's betting against righties and lefties, but could make Canha and potentially get some ABs as the DH. Conforto can play some time in the outfield. He's just a better defender than Mark Canha is in left field. So yes, is bringing back the old guard the right decision? Probably not. And you're already seeing the Civil War on Twitter. But he does make more sense than JD Martinez or hell, even Trey Mancini, which, Trey can play left field. He doesn't play it great. Conforto's going to play a way better left field than Mancini. Yes, he kills lefties. But if you want to bring in the fourth outfielder, not even just a fourth outfielder, potentially a starting left fielder, I'm growing on the Conforto idea, and not because I'm a closet Conforto fan, and I just let him take all the heat.
The only other benefit if you sign someone who could actually play the outfield to be your DH, which again, I don't know if they could do now with the whole Narvaez Alvarez thing, is that I wouldn't mind Marte getting some DH reps because we saw him play through a lot of different things. I just think if you could have Marte just a little more rested, a little more fresh, so that he can be stealing bases and just give you his full value, that wouldn't be a bad thing either. Since he is older, instead of you could just every couple days making the DH have whoever, Conforto or whatever other guy play right field. It's not the terrible idea in the world because now Marte's also going to be a year older as well. We talk about Canagan a year older. Marte's going to be a year older as well. And we still have him for 2 more years after this. So we got to keep him healthy for the entirety of the season because we saw once he's out of the lineup, it's a really different lineup for this team.
I mean, I think it's very, very, very reasonable to be worried about Canna going into next season. And I think I've expressed this a few times. Andrew, your reasoning is stupid. But you out there, he looks like an unathletic white guy. Yeah, every single white guy does.
Does Brandon Nimmo catch a fly ball like, it's baseball catch? No. He's like, I got this. Yeah.
He looked like that before he improved defensively, so I don't want to hear it. As for Mark Canha, what I'm worried about with him is the no shift. That's what I'm really worried about. He's a very tethered type of hitter where he can hit right to the shortstop and he can hit right to the second base hole. Maybe, he fixes the launch angle problem a little bit, and maybe he does lift the ball like he did a little bit more in the second half of the season. That's definitely the right concern to have. Not for the right point. That was stupid. But as for Conforto, like I've said, they offered him $100 million for 5 years. He turned it down. They offered him the qualifying offer after he played to deserving a qualifying offer. He turned it down. At this point, the book is closed. If he does come back, I will be spreading propaganda about him. That's just me being annoying. If you want a fourth outfielder, if you want a guy who can be a starter and you want a platoon, I think Robbie Grossman is a better option for that. Because we talk about left-handed hitters. Robbie Grossman is one of the best hitters against lefties in all of baseball.
So was Darren Ruff, and that didn't go well. We need actual stars.
Darren Ruff is 36 years old and sucks and hits the ball on the ground a lot. Robbie Grossman hits some dingers against lefties, okay? As for Conforto, again, do I think he's going to do well when he comes back? I think he will bounce back. But, you're taking the same risk that you're taking with Marte of the injury history and everything like that. You're taking these risks that don't need to be taken. I think there's some options out there that they should look at before Michael Conforto. As for Michael Conforto himself, he is an Eppler bat. I will tell you that. I do believe that he would have been brought back under Eppler's management if he didn't get hurt. The one thing I can say is that look somewhere else. I think they need to look somewhere else first. If he's your last resort, he's your last resort. And I'm hopping on the bandwagon of Scooter's revenge and annoying the living crap out of all of you. So then there is another fourth outfielder / utility player that the Mets have had some mutual interest in. We're talking about expanding the bench. We need a fourth outfielder. There have been some reports that they have mutual interest in Jerickson Profar. Profar is a 30-year-old utility player who does a little bit of everything, not at an elite rate. Last year, he had a quality season with San Diego with a 110 WRC plus in 658 plate appearances and posted a sub-3 win campaign.
He was a number 1 overall prospect in 2011. He was one of these highly touted players. He was going to be this generational talent with Texas, and he flopped. And he kind of just hammered around, went to San Diego, quality little player. And again, if ESPN, the wild card series, he made the game-saving play with that diving catch to stop the ball from going into the corner, according to Eduardo Perez. He's the type of guy, you can play left field again with Canna, switch hitting bat, better against righties than lefties, which, okay, whatever. But again, a guy who can play second, he can play third, he can play all 3 outfield spots. If you're going to be so fat dependent on the bench, he's the type of guy, with him and Guillorme and then McNeil, where you can play 3 guys anywhere need be. In a case of an emergency, Frank loves those. In case of an emergency, you would have guys like Profar, Guillorme, and McNeil, just in case. Oh, if there's an injury in left field, okay, put Profar in left. Or if there's an injury in right field, McNeil can go to right, and then Profar can go to second, and then you can put Canna in left. He's one of these type of glue guys who can play any position. Well, not any majority of the positions on the field, feel comfortable, switch hitting bat, which is always good to have some more switch hitters in your lineup, and just kind of do it all. Is he, this great number one bat? No. But again, he can be, you see it against the Mets. He killed the Mets all year last year throughout the playoffs and the regular season. He's one of these just pesky hitters. He could be a starter in left. Again, gives you the benefit of if you do get a huge regression from Canada, gives you an option in left field. It gives you the ability, if you want to put McNeil in left, give Profar at second. The Mets need to find a utility guy better than Luis Guillorme. And yes, would I pay probably the $13 million that, maybe you trade Carrasco to give it to Profar? I think that's a pretty valuable piece. It's kind of like Escobar. You brought Escobar in last year hoping maybe to be a utility guy. Maybe if Beatty were to come up earlier, you had your third baseman, you could make Escobar kind of that utility guy. He's the same way. He can play anywhere, solid, bad. The Mets have had some interest. He had some interest as well coming to the Mets. The Astros are always interested, which is a concern. The World Series champs. Maybe he takes a little bit of a discount to go to the World Series champs, but I doubt it. He would be a great addition to this team, but, is it going to happen? We'll see. On the right price, I'm all for it.
I will say one thing real quick. This does remind me a lot of a Jonathan VR player, so it kind of scares me to think that he's probably going to be one of those guys who pisses me off a lot, but,
Yeah, like Andrew said, there's lots to like about Profar. He puts bat on the ball, doesn't strike out too much, and he can, again, as we saw, hit home runs. He did it in the playoffs against the Mets, so he can step up in the big moments in Citi Field, but can he do it wearing a Mets uniform? I mean, that's just a whole nother element that it just brings you down a few notches. So we'll see if he can, but I just think that, like Andrew said, he fills so many roles. And I think they got to get somebody to add to this bench, like anybody. They really could use it because we saw what happened when there was a time Lindor was hurt, Escobar was hurt, and Guillorme was hurt. And we saw what the alternative was. It was Devin freaking Marrero. I love my Ducks. They don't belong as Mets. Simple. So we just need somebody who is majorly capable that could move around the field. And Jurickson Profar is that and then some. He could be a solid bat for you if he needs to start, which is perfect for a utility guy where an injury can happen. And it could happen in the playoffs. And it's like, all of a sudden, what are you going to do now? It's like, oh, well, too bad. It's too late in the season. We can't get anybody now. You always need to have those backup plans, especially when you have all these guys at advanced age. Like we talked about Canada. He's getting older. Escobar's getting older. We already know how old Marte is. So if you needed to have Profar play second and move McNeil to right field for the playoffs, you have the ability to do that and still have somebody who's kind of capable of being a starter for you. So I think he just checks a lot of boxes for what the Mets could use right now. And he's just a really good fit. He's a solid player. I like him. He's not great, not an all-star, but they don't need that right now. They just need other quality players that are major league ready on this team. Preferably some guys that could actually play the outfield, which Profar can do. So I think he's a really nice fit for this particular Mets team.
You had to sneak that shit in there.
Because if he doesn't do well, I'm going to say I never said he was going to be an all-star. I at least have to get that preference.
If they were to bring in a guy like Jurickson Profar, first off the top of my head, this is an Eppler bat. This is a 100% Eppler bat. Plays multiple positions, puts the ball in play. He's a count killer. He's a pest. Whatever. I think when you do bring in Jurickson Profar, even though it probably will be on 1 year or maybe 2 years, I think you do have to see maybe there is something where they don't bring back Luis Guillorme. At this point, you're seeing a bunch of DHs piled up on this fucking bench, so maybe there isn't any room if they do bring in Jurickson Profar. Do I want that to happen? No, because he has a great beard, and Jurickson Profar does not have a nice beard. I've said it before, as much as I love Guillorme and the grit and the amazing diving catches he makes and how he's a inhumane type of player, if they have to expand the bench, and that means getting rid of Guillorme, so be it. So as for another area that has some question marks in it, General Manager Billy Eppler says that the Mets will continue to stay engaged in the reliever market after re-signing Edwin Diaz, trading for Brooks Raley, and signing David Robertson. The Mets have been linked to a few more bullpen names. There's been Adam Ottavino, a possible reunion. There's been Andrew Chafin in the past, and Zach Britton, who does have the Buck Showalter connection.
In my video, I talked about, there are some guys that are out there, the Zach Brittons of the world, the Chad Greens of the world, guys that have had their injuries lately, but I think that since they've acquired Raley, since they've acquired Robertson, they now have the flexibility to kind of do, like I call these flyer guys who you don't know what you can get. Maybe they could have something of what they used to be, but you're not relying on them to be high leverage, be your back end type of the bullpen guys. So if they wanted to take a flyer on one of these older guys, I'd be okay with it because they got the back end secured. I still think a guy like Taylor Rogers fits really well on this team. I wouldn't mind getting him. Ottavino, it's still 1 year or nothing. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it because you already signed David Robinson, who's really old. Otto, he's not. He might have a good year again. He will not be as good as he was this year. I strongly believe that it's not going to happen. It's very rare to see that from relievers, especially at an advanced age. It's just hard to rely on anything like that. But if they wanted to get one of those guys, I mean, Carson's buddy Corey Knebel is still out there. Like, there's still plenty of those older guys. Like, I still think I would have taken Michael Gibbons for $30 million. I still feel like I would have done that. Just at that value, you're not signing relievers for as cheap as that. So there's still plenty of guys out there, guys that are veterans that they could get that should be 1 year deals that shouldn't cost a crazy amount. So if they want to get a Brent, if they want to get an Ottavino, I'm okay with it because they aren't relying on them to be the high leverage guys. They're not asking them to be the 8th and 7th guys. Since they got Robertson, they could be a little more creative with how they want to assemble the rest of the bullpen to just fit in with the other young arms that they've added through the 40-man roster with the waiver claims and trades and things like that. They can now go for the veterans.
Yeah, Frank kind of hit on it. Obviously, they went out and did a ton of waiver claims when they had like 11 40-man roster spots. And to get younger, and that's their, Steven Ridings, the William Woods, those guys. Those will be the reclamation project. Same thing with our boy Dayoka. So the Mets bullpen does need they locked down the bridge. 3/4 of the bridge, in my opinion. They need one more high leverage arm. Because I would like Brooks Raley to just be this, you can deploy him at any time needed. Like, he's not like locked down. He's your 7th inning guy, let's say. I want to see Raley just any opportunity, just whip him out whenever we need him.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. She whipped that out right now. Ottavino makes too much sense on the 1 year deal. I've said it. I'd put the same contract in front of Ottavino. Give you the raise from last year. You're going to get paid for what you did last year. Be the 7th inning guy. Now you don't have to be the 8th inning guy. Your role gets diminished a little, but you get paid on a 1 year deal. And like I said, a veteran guy. And like Britton is nice. I've made it clear, and especially in the last video, I want a second lefty in the pen. I wouldn't mind Britton to just be a lefty. Not obviously he's not going to be as high leverage. Taking a flyer on a younger arm with some upside. Somebody's been banging the drum about getting younger. One of the younger reclamation projects, my boy Alex Reyes, former All-Star. And Alex Reyes can fill right in. Put him in Drew Smith's role. That's what, and then if you could potentially get the upside you saw in the first half of 2021, hell, you got one of the most lethal back ends of the bullpen. For $5 million, there's not but a 1 year deal, $10 million again. 12 million, who knows?
Like I said, you can take a bet on these guys types of deal, but it has to be younger. I'm sorry, these Zach Britton guys, the Chad Green, I'm sorry.
But the thing is, there's not very young relievers on the market right now.
Corey Knebel.
He's fucking 30. He's the same age as Chad Green. What the fuck you mean he's younger? Same age.
I'm sorry, but Chad Green sucks. There's a difference. Green.
We're gonna sign Nick Frummer's son. This is the guy
Okay, listen.
Nick Frummer's son.
Listen.
Jeff McNeil's son.
I'm sorry. This is going to be a take that I'm going to take to my grave because that's what has been proven. Okay, Chad Green is literally the exact same pitcher as Trevor May. End of story. Had a little mild success, top 20, top 10 potential, got hurt, given up bombs, command is dog shit. End of story. It's the same person. It's the same guy. Now, as for Zach Britton, he's just cooked. He's just done. I'm sorry. These old guys, enough. Younger, good side of 30. They've had success, but they have a lot in them. Enough with these old fucks. Enough with the Jansons. Enough with the Kimbrels and the Chad Greens and the Zach Brittons. It's done. Enough with the Chapman. I'm done seeing this crap. No, absolutely not. Piece of shit human being, piece of shit arm, can't throw a fucking strike. Absolutely not. No more panic attacks. Done. Absolutely. Alex Reyes? No. You hated Miguel Castro? You're going to hate Alex Reyes, especially after injury.
No. I've seen Alex Reyes do good. I watched that man at his best. That man has way more talent than Miguel Castro. ever had.
He has a higher fly ball rate than Drew Smith. He has a higher walk rate than Miguel Castro. You don't want that.
No,
I'll tell you right now.
Give me
Just
the only bad
if
thing
he
about Alex
is
Reyes.
if he is such a given of the amazing all-star that he was, why is nobody taking him yet? Because he stinks. That's why. He throws 100, but his stuff stinks, right? He's not that good. End of story. What happened?
No, Sierra doesn't like Corey Knebel.
I don't care.
Worse Sierra than Taiwan Walker?
Okay, first of all, reliever to starter. Enough. Sierra is a strikeout-heavy metric. Did he get that many strikeouts last year? The guy that can fix. That's someone I'm willing to take a flyer on. Not these guys who are old, coming off Tommy John surgery, and they have Hall of Fame coed. Okay?
I mean, Michael Fulmer's the same age as Knebel.
Michael Fulmer isn't good. Again, give me someone who's good, who's young.
There's not that many young guys, though.
Michael Fulmer isn't good. Okay?
Because you walk a couple of batters. He's not good. I mean, oh my God.
It's not the walks. It's not the walks. You guys have this fascinations of guys who you remember being good once. They're going to be good forever. That's how relievers are. Now let's get to some questions that you guys sent to us via our community page. And guys, for future reference, if you want to ask a Mets-related question to us, make sure to click the link in the description. We love to hear from you guys. Type in your question and let us know. So the first question is coming from YouTube. Ryan is asking, McGill and Peterson, who has a better chance to be in the bullpen, or could both of them begin in the bullpen? So where will McGill and Peterson begin the season?
Can the right answer be they're both in Syracuse? So I think that's the best answer for this team, is that they're both in Syracuse. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if both. I could see one of them in Syracuse. Taking a guess, it'd probably be McGill, because they have this fascination with David Peterson. So if I had to take a guess, I wouldn't be surprised if Peterson is the Trevor Williams replacement, and then McGill is down in Syracuse in an emergency once somebody gets hurt or somebody needs a spot start, and hopefully maybe there's some more depth they bring in within the next before opening day to fill out that Syracuse rotation.
Yeah, I think when it comes to just bullpen specifically, I think it leans more towards David Peterson. I think the fact that he's left-handed definitely helps him out. The way his slider works, that also translates as a reliever. Carson called him a reliever originally, then he just called him bad. So I just think that he profiles as a reliever a little better than McGill does. I think McGill's a better chance of the rotation and Pierce a better chance of the bullpen. That's kind of the way I view it. I think McGill fits more as a starter and Pierce fits more as a bullpen. Could both end up in Syracuse? Maybe. Could one end up in Syracuse? Sure. I think this is also contingent on what happens with Carrasco. If they are not able to move Carrasco, I think maybe both of them could end up in the minor leagues. If they can move Carrasco and they don't sign another starting pitcher, one of them could end up in the rotation, and then maybe the other in the bullpen. There's a few scenarios where pretty much anybody can end up anywhere at this point.
David Peterson, where I hope he is Shanghai. But I think that they like Peterson more than McGill for some fucking reason. He had a better DRA than him, so he's going to do it again. You have to be very careful with how you approach with McGill because of his injury history. I'm pretty sure Andrew brought this up before, of how they need to explain and solidify whether McGill, are you going to be a starter? Or are you going to be a reliever, and stick to it? I did not like him coming out of the bullpen. The main reason why they brought him to come out of the bullpen was because he was gassing 98, 99. He wasn't doing it. He was barely hitting 96. So that's why they wanted that high profile velocity in the bullpen. And he just didn't look right. He just didn't look right at all. This guy was wincing after every single pitch he was throwing. So it's question marks. You always are going to have those question marks. But if I had to take a guess, I think that Peterson does end up being the 5 starter if they don't bring in somebody else through a Carrasco trade. And then there's McGill, who I think will probably either start in AAA, or maybe they decide to go a 6-man rotation, like we've said, with injury-prone pitchers at the top. All right, so this one is from Investing Food Money. This is from Reddit. Great name. Love the name, man. I guess basically what he's saying is, why do you think the Mets didn't go after Josh Bell, both last year and this offseason?
For Josh Bell, I think when it comes to trade deadline, I think you could throw this for anybody, whether it's Martinez, Bell, Mancini. the Mets were not going to trade for a rental. I mean, that was just their thought process. They didn't care if it was going to be Darren Ruff because at least it wasn't a rental, so you can't blame us for that because just the whole Javi Baez situation, PCA and all that. So I think that's why they didn't go after Bell. I feel like you saw what some of the rentals costed. The Mets just felt like it wasn't worth it. So I get that. As far as the free agent market, I don't know because I think that Josh Bell fit this team pretty well. He was a switch hitter, kind of younger. He wasn't hurt like Martinez and these guys. He could hit the ball over the fence. He has pretty good home run power. So I would have been perfectly fine with him batting right after Pete Alonso as the full-time DH. So he didn't have to do a platoon. And Bell could kind of play first base. There were times in his career when he played the outfield. Not particularly well, but he did do it. So I just felt like, and based off what he got from Cleveland, I didn't think it was unreasonable. I thought he was a pretty good fit for this team when you look at all the other free agents that were out there. As far as the kind of hitter that they are, Bell was a guy that he was starting to hit for average more. He was starting to go the other way more. So we were starting to see some improvements with him. In the first half we're watching. Second half, San Diego, I don't know what happened. That was just all the trade deadline acquisitions. They all just went bad. Mancini, Bell, Martinez, you name it. Everyone in the second half just bad. I don't know what happened there. So maybe that could have been part of it too. Like maybe the fact that he just didn't close out the season strong. The much like maybe we don't want him after all. So he's a guy I liked, but they just for whatever reason they didn't like him. Did they want someone versatility that actually play positions? I don't know because they keep signing guys and adding guys that don't have versatility. So you can't even use that argument against Josh Bell. So it's pretty confusing to me as well.
No. The reason why is because they didn't want fatter Taijuan Walker. This guy is the hitting version of Taijuan Walker. He'll give you one great half. Holy shit, this dude is awesome. And then he turns into a shittier hitter than James McCann the other half of the season. The dude sucks. I didn't want to touch him, but when he was a national, I didn't want to touch him in free agency. I have never understood the fascination for Taijuan Walker offensively. I didn't want this dude when he was in Pittsburgh. I didn't want this dude in Washington. I didn't want it now in San Diego. He took Scherzer deep in the playoffs. Oh, that changes. He kills the Mets. I am so happy he's in the American League. We'll only have to see him. We play Cleveland this year. It'll be 3 games, and the next time we would see him would be in the World Series. And I'll take that bet. I don't understand. He's not a good ball player. I don't understand why everyone's punching the ground. We need a Josh Bell. Josh Bell sucks.
I think we all have different answers for this because, again, we just don't really know. But, I think it's just the fascination with Mark Vientos. They like Mark Vientos so much that they're willing to pass off guys who are rentals, making guys, such a risk. And, but I would have taken a chance on one of these bats. I'm not really someone who takes into account the type of guy that they are after the trade deadline. I think every situation is different. Josh Bell has had his tough slumps. He's had his tough stretches, and he's had a few seasons where he's just not looked like himself. He's a power bat. He's there to provide you power. That's what he's there for. He's got some discipline, so maybe Eppler should have pulled the trigger there, but he can be a very streaky hitter. Very, very, very streaky. I think there were some options out there that were probably a better fit than him. As for free agency, I would have preferred Jock, but that's a different story. Let's get to the rapid fire stories. Nationals have signed former Met Travis Blankenhorn to a minor league contract. Blankenhorn had a few cups of coffee for the Mets from 2021 to 2022. Mets free agent Adam Ottavino and newly acquired lefty Brooks Raley will both play for the United States in the upcoming World Baseball Classic in March. Ottavino played for Team Italy back in 2009 while he was with the Cardinals organization. Mets manager Buck Showalter also leaked that Raley could possibly also compete during an interview. The Mets will receive 2 fourth-round compensation picks for Jacob deGrom going to Texas and Chris Bassitt going to Toronto. The Mets now have 7 picks before the 5th round of the 2023 draft. The Mets signed Abraham Almonte to a minor league contract with an invite to spring training. Almonte is 33 years old, coming off his most recent year in Boston, just getting 37 plate appearances and just appearing in 15 games. The Oakland A's have signed Trevor May to a 1-year, $7 million contract. May spent 2 years in Queens, aggressively sweating through an even 4 earned run average and a 3.78 fielding independent pitching, 87.2 innings out of the Mets bullpen. Happy birthday to the big guy himself. Daniel Vogelbach turns 30 this week. As we all know, Vogelbach's $1.5 million team option was picked up by the Mets this offseason. He will be back next year. Parting words.
I hope at least another reliever or two. I really would like to have some kind of resolution. What are we doing with? I mean, are we going to put him back in the minors? Because we just, like we said with the bench, there's just no versatility there. We have 3 catchers and 3 DHs. That's our team. Like, somebody's got to go. They've got to figure that out, sort it out. Because right now, in a 162-game season, again, it's just hard to really have a solid team with that kind of bench.
Yeah, I'd expect, hopefully next time. I called a few things last week that happened. I'm going to call a few more. Obviously, I think McChicken gets traded to Arizona. I think Carlos Carrasco gets flipped to Minnesota. And Ottavino signs a 1+1 for about $22 million.
Hope you guys enjoyed episode 2 of the Mets Weekly Podcast. We'll see you guys next week. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on TikTok, all that stuff. Links are in the description, and we'll see you guys next time. LFGM.